Welcome. This is another in a series of interviews with libertarians running in Wake County. I'm Brian Irving, the press secretary for the Libertarian Party of Wake County. Today I'm talking to Liam Lieber, who's a candidate for North Carolina House of Representatives in District 37. Liam was born in Brooklyn, New York, and joined the Army in 2009. He served on active duty as an air defense artilleryman until 2017, when he moved to North Carolina with his fiancée and joined the North Carolina National Guard. Liam recently retired from the Guard and now is a full-time student at Wake Tech while working as a compressed gas blender with a major gas company in Durham. And he tells me he's quite busy servicing people that are working on COVID-19 issues.
Yes.
Mixing specialized gases. Liam lives in Holly Springs. Liam, thanks for being with us. Let's start with the usual question: why are you running for office? What are your issues?
Well, first I want to thank you, Brian, for having me on. The main three reasons why I am running are to fix and help our community in District 37. That's the big overall one, obviously. But to attain that, we want to change and repair our broken ABC system, the monopoly that is the state-run and just archaic system that they maintain the alcohol and sales and distribution of all alcohol in the state. Housing affordability, getting the communities to grow and develop the same way that the people inside the communities want, not the way people in Raleigh want it, the legislators in Raleigh want it. And letting the people that own the property to develop their land and get zoning rights fixed so that they can develop and build housing so that it will fix their communities the way they want. And lastly, school choice, getting parents the ability and the right to educate their children the way they want and the way they deserve. Having money just funnel into the education system without any voice in any direction that parents want for their children is not a viable option. We need to fix that.
Okay, that's good. Let's talk a little bit more about the first issue you mentioned, the ABC system. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. The ABC system is a very archaic one in the sense that the North Carolina government runs it and is the only one allowed to operate it. And in this country, we believe in freedom of association and freedom of selection. I can't tell you how many times I've been to an ABC store and I can't find a certain alcohol I want, and I ask the people on the front desk, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And then there's price controls. I would love competition. Competition drives down prices. I think that's very, very clear and very fair. I mean, we've also saw the article about, I think it was about earlier this year, when the ABC warehouse was empty and they were running in the bread. The state government is the only place I've ever seen that can have a monopoly on alcohol and still not make a profit.
Good. Yeah, that's I can see that as a problem. And the second issue you mentioned was housing affordability.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Housing affordability is very important to me, just as someone who grew up in a very unaffordable market. I moved as a child multiple times. I used to tell my friends that my family were gypsies because we moved so much. We deserve and are encouraged to have a community developed and created by its members, not by a zoning arbitrary lines. You should be able to develop and build a apartment for your elderly mother or your grandmother, or the grandmother shacks as they're called in the backyard, and you should be able to develop and build on your land. And you shouldn't have to answer to a government to build a property that you want and the community wants. If the community has a problem with it, they'll come together and they'll find a way to fix it.
Good. And the last issue you mentioned was education, which is a perennial issue in North Carolina.
Yeah, school choice is very important. The money should follow the child. We have a thing in North Carolina right now which is shown to work. It's called the Opportunity Scholarship. It grants low-income families the ability to get their child into tuition-based schools. The money that goes out is $4,200, and it's not fully funded. It needs to be, and we have people in the legislation that are trying to fight it. And I mean, I'm actually looking at the numbers right now for the household income eligibility guidelines for 2021. The maximum household gross income for with two people in the household, if you make $31,000, you receive the full tuition. I mean, that's a really fair number, I think, and I think that the more people should have the opportunity to get that.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. So are there any other issues that you think are important to your constituents that you may want to address while you're in the General Assembly?
Well, all three of those issues are my main ones. There's a couple issues that I would love to discuss. The main one is the rezoning. I've spoken with a couple people, and they were talking about how they would love to build on their land, but they can't because of the granny flat rule, and they're not allowed to have that in their backyard. I actually was on my HOA conversation on our Facebook page yesterday, and they asked me about the Alcohol Board Commission, and I told them my plan, and they said that they're voting for me because I'm not in support of the ABC program. So that's my main goals. Other than that, I would love to address just taking a look at the broad scope of the executive and seeing if we can somehow talk and discuss about trying to limit it. But that's further down the line.
Good, and particularly in now when the idea of the emergency powers of the governor are being discussed.
Yes.
And unfortunately being politicized by the establishment party. So
exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. You mentioned your active duty and Guard Army time. Is there anything in particular, any experience or training that you received while in the military, or what you're learning now? Would help you as a state representative?
Yeah, I was active for 10 years, or 7 years, 3 years. 3 years was a guard. I was in the military for 10 years, and in those 10 years, I learned how to deal with people, and especially dealing with people that have authority and assumed and deferred authority from the government. I was not always the highest ranking person in the room, but I was in positions of authority above them. When I worked in the S shop, I would handle range times, and I had to put out deadlines to first sergeants. So first sergeants would come to me and explain to me that they outranked me and that they needed this time, and I said, no, you didn't make the time. You didn't make the deadline on time, so now you have to near the bottom of the list. It takes truth to power, something I have, and I also have the ability to explain to people in a very direct manner about my beliefs and how I can ascertain the way about doing that.
Is there any particular experience or person in your life that may have either changed the direction or gave you direction in what you were doing?
Yeah, it goes back to my military career. There's a old command sergeant major. His name is Jerry Woodley. He was my command sergeant major in Korea, and I worked directly under him as the reception NCO. I was the person who entered all of the family members into Korea, and me and him had a conversation about the way the government was working and the way our military framework was going. And he explained to me in a very direct manner that we as a fighting force need to readjust the way we engage and look at our situations as a political landscape. Just looking at things from a military standpoint, where the only thing you can do is either engage or disengage. There is a third option where it's sit back and win hearts and minds by listening and having discussions with people. And he showed me that, and it fundamentally changed the way I interact with people. So thanks to Command Sergeant Major Jerry Woodley of the 21ADA.
Yes, I know. Sometimes those sergeant majors, those senior NCOs really can teach you a lot, regardless of what your rank is.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about being a libertarian and fighting, contesting a race where there's the establishment parties are pretty well entrenched. When you're elected, How will you work with the Democrats and Republicans in the General Assembly to accomplish what you want?
I think that's honestly one of the unique things that makes you libertarians an extremely beneficial area is when you start to talk to libertarian, you realize that we're one of the more rational parties out there in the sense that agree with Republicans and agree with liberals or Democrats in the same breath. We believe in a lot of things that the Democrat Party has stances on, but we disagree with a lot. We also agree with a lot Republicans have and disagree with them a lot too. The matter of me being able to go in there and have that ability where I can reach across both aisles and go, hey, this is where we agree. This is my party's goals are in alignment with yours. We can make a law that fits both of our narratives and we can make this work. And I can do that on both sides. I would be that rubber that used to be, bipartisanship. We can make it tripartisanship, as Representative Justin Amash said.
Actually, there is a statute dealing with elections that talks about a multi-partisan voting assistance team. So when that bill was drafted a few years ago, the establishment parties recognized that North Carolina is a multi-party state. We actually have 5 parties on the ballot, and
Yes.
a third of the voters are unaffiliated.
Yes.
And we pretty much covered most of the questions I had, and that's good.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the opportunity now to maybe touch on any topic that we haven't mentioned.
Okay. I just more of just a direct to the viewers. My name is Liam Lever. I was a 7-year Army veteran. I am an active member of our community, and I'm doing everything I can to try to make it a more fair and equitable place for all of us. If you vote for me, you're going to get a person who's honorable and has integrity and believes in a lot of the things you believe in. And if you don't, I'm open and ready to have my mind changed if you bring a fair and reasonable argument to it.
Good, thank you. We've been talking today with Liam Lever, who's the Libertarian candidate for North Carolina House of Representatives, District 37.
Yes.
If you need more information, you can go to Liam for Liberty, FORLiberty.org. If you want to find out more about him, communicate with him, or possibly donate to his campaign.
Thank you very much.
Liam.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Take care.
Take care, you too.